but right.
Well, we because we're springing this on people, we should just introduce the book.
Yeah. So, look, we're doing Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. It's the iconic American book about American journalism book, I think, right? Is it fair to say that? Although it's not really journalism. It's so clearly, I think it's a novel. We can have this discussion.
Yeah, I would call it a novel because right now I'm finishing a book about a road trip that I took, and my standards for accuracy and authentic portrayal are 100 times what Hunter's were. Hunter jammed together a bunch of trips. He basically gave himself a pass by being totally wasted half the time. How does he know what people's names were and what they were really doing or really meaning?
I even heard the drug collection was several different drug collections.
What do you mean?
That actually, when he loads up in the beginning chapters, that's actually an amalgamation of several different scenes. But whatever. It doesn't matter. It's a book, right? And this is a very famous book. It's very beloved by people in our generation for a lot of reasons, among other things, just because it's screamingly funny. It's crazy. It has this Cassandra-like feel of radical truth-telling to it, even though the facts are totally unreliable. That's not what we're talking about.
Hunter's truth.
Hunter's truth. And Hunter is a unique figure. I think even in literature, we can get into who he is, but this I think was his great work. He was mostly a journalist, but he sat down and he wrote this thing that every writer wants this moment where it just suddenly just starts pouring out. And that was this for him. Walter, I thought we could start by having you read the first chapter, the first section of Fear and Loathing. Do you have the book in front of you?
I don't actually.
Okay, I'll read it then.
You go ahead. Matt, you are much more the heir to Hunter Thompson than I am.
Well, no, definitely.
You worked at the same magazine. You're gloriously vivid and obscene in your writing. The apostolic succession goes to you.
Well, I would quibble with that, but I'm more than happy to read the beginning of this book just because it's so iconic. It's something that people read at the beginnings of road trips all the time. This is a book that can be read aloud in almost any company because people will laugh all the way through. But it starts like this. We were somewhere around Barstow on the edge of the desert when the drugs began to take hold. I remember saying something like, I feel a little bit lightheaded. Maybe you should drive. And suddenly there was a terrible roar all around us, and the sky was full of what looked like huge bats, all swooping and screeching and diving around the car, which was going about 100 miles an hour with the top down to Las Vegas. And a voice was screaming, "Holy Jesus, what are these goddamn animals?" This is one of the great openings of all time, right? And this book, who was it who called it a scorching apocalypse sensation? I forget that. That was always one of the blurbs in the back.
That sounds like the Times trying to be hip.
Yeah, but it always talks about how this book takes off like a rocket, and it does. Walter, do you want to give a brief capsule about what this book is about, and before we get into some of its great qualities by way of introduction?
Well, Hunter is on a junket. He's on a trip to Las Vegas, paid for journalistic jaunt, and he's with his sidekick, his lawyer, whose name is
my attorney.
But what was his name in real life?
Oscar.
That's right. Yeah. A Samoan attorney. And for me right there, okay, there's a theory that American literature is especially good at one kind of story, and it was
Oscar Acosta,
yeah.
Zeta Acosta. Yeah.
And this theory was espoused by a famous literary critic, a professor named Leslie Fiedler. And he said that the story of two men, friends, pairs of male friends, somehow has greater sway, influence, and impact in the American literary canon than almost any other theme. Go back to Huck and Jim, Queequeg and
Ishmael. Yeah,
Ishmael.
we talked about this. Yep.
And here we have another great duo. It's a very cinematic beginning, right? It concentrates on the visual. It's got two people in a car headed to a city where anything can happen. And by the time it was written, Las Vegas was, absolutely established in American culture as this bizarre place. But it hadn't been written about really with much care. I mean, Tom Wolfe had done a couple of reports from Las Vegas, but he's going to the frontier of the American psyche. And that's really what this book is. It's about psychic frontiers. How wasted can you get and still make sense of things? How weird can a place be and still be a place?
How much credit can you run up before you finally get canceled in this country?
Right. I mean, it's got that cowboy feel too. It's, two cowboys riding into town looking for trouble. What will they find? So the assignment is, I believe, to cover a sheriff's convention.
Well, yes, and then there's also a race that they end up covering, the Mint 400.
Right.
Yeah, but before they even get there, they're on the road. They don't tell you why they're on the road at the beginning. We just know that they're in a convertible. The convertible is packed full of every conceivable kind of drugs, including the thing that they fear the most, which is ether. And there are already misadventures in the beginning when they pick up a hitchhiker. Then they, in the second chapter, explain the assignment. And then only in the third chapter does Hunter Thompson give you the sort of topic paragraph, the explanation of what this is, and why all the excess, why all the drugs, why are they loading up with such expectation, what are they doing? And there's this great graph. It says, but our trip was different. It was a classic affirmation of everything right and true and decent in the national character. It was a gross physical salute to the fantastic possibilities of life in this country, but only for those with true grit, and we were chock full of that. My attorney understood this concept, despite his racial handicap. And by the way, that's one of the running jokes of this whole thing, is that the attorney's Samoan, and they're constantly busting each other's balls about this and that, and one's always more wasted than the other in these scenes, but
they've got the buddy system. They're always rescuing each other when one totally gacks out or collapses. But that's a very important paragraph. You're right, because it situates the adventure in the great tradition. He is saying we've got true grit. It is a cowboy story. It is about two individuals on, relying on their own resources and, maybe too heavily on their own mental and emotional resources, going to find something out. It's a quest. I don't know if
it's
the dark
Don Quixote, right there. Yeah.
Is it in the book or is it on the cover? A journey into the dark heart of the American dream.
Yeah.
But it's that kind of thing. It's a question book. what will we find? What will we find about ourselves? What will we find about America? And what will we find about our tolerance for, 5 different psychedelics on top of, speed, ketamine, or whatever it might be. And so,
and it would have been Coke, except they have a disaster early on, which I think is one of the funniest parts in the whole book. When the attorney goes to open they have a little salt shaker full of cocaine to go along with everything else. They have like a whole bag full of drugs. It's like it's every college student's dream. And let's see what it says. So the attorney's telling him to chew the blotter acid like baseball gum. And then there's this sentence: I took the blotter and ate it. My attorney was now fumbling with the salt shaker containing the cocaine, opening it, spilling it, then screaming and grabbing at the air as our fine white dust blew up and out across the desert highway. A very expensive little twister rising up from the great white red shark. Oh, Jesus, he moaned. Did you see what God just did to us? God didn't do that, I shouted. You did it. You're a fucking narcotics agent. I was onto your stinking act from the start, you pig. And it's one of 50 or 60 just laugh out loud lines in this book. All about how, they have sort of like almost circus clowns, perfectly bad timing always throughout this book.
But it should be remembered. What's the year of the book? 1972. That they are...
Sorry, 71. Yep.
71. They are outlaws, true outlaws. There was no drug legalization. There was no clemency toward drug crimes. The stuff they're carrying is hard time worthy if they get caught.
And there are billboards to remind them of that all the way through Nevada.
Right. Yeah. They're dancing on the edge. They're libertarian, pirate, cowboy, outlaw journalists, and just the greatest coup, which passes before you know it, is that he completely decimates our sense of the journalist as a serious a professional. Okay. In some ways, I think journalists love this story because it speaks to the anarchic heart of the profession. You know what the profession's really about? Peeping around corners to see things you weren't supposed to see, pretending to be people you aren't so as to gain the confidence of others, acting on tips, being absolutely liberal with the idea of an expense account and what it can cover.
Maintaining while wasted.
Yeah, maintaining while wasted. All the things that in the age of NBC and the New York Times and et cetera, have been forgotten. Journalists now pose as glasses-wearing family men who, go home and cook a bouillabaisse with their wife and discuss, I don't know, something serious. In his day, they were much closer to their origins, which is something between a private detective, a criminal, a loner, drifter, and a just sensation-seeking machine of lust and pleasure who likes to go to new places because you don't have to be yourself in new places, in hotels and cities where you don't live and so on. And it's a valuable reminder that beneath the three-piece suit or bow-tied Chris Hayes and, Jake Tapper and Rachel Maddow, I like to think beats the tiny heart of Hunter Thompson. But maybe they've ruined that. I don't know. Maybe they've forgotten their origins. Well, okay, the other thing I like about it is that he's on a story, but it's not the story, because the little stories that occasioned the assignment aren't the story. He's on the biggest story of all. What the hell does it all mean?
Right.
You know, or does it mean nothing? And what the fuck is America? And what the fuck can we learn from Las Vegas about what America is? And he's going to tell you by the end. He's going to tell you what kind of period we live in, where we are in history, what the big story is. But he's after the big story. And
but Walter, but you know, this is important. Hunter was actually an excellent journalist. Like when he
absolutely
was actually, when he was covering actual things, right? Like whether it was presidential campaign, or you know, the Kentucky Derby, even or the Hells Angels.
race riots in Los Angeles.
Right, exactly. He was he was great at capturing the scene, but also he was really good at describing for you processes, right? Like how do things actually work? Whose opinion really matters? Like, so he was really good at that side of the job. In this book, though, uniquely, unlike all of his other books, the story is something, it's metaphysical. It's something inside him. It's he doesn't actually sink to doing journalism in the book. It's something higher, it feels like to me.
It's social commentary,
right?
When he gets to Circus, the casino, which has trapeze acts and contortionists under this big tent where everybody's gambling, and he says, if the Third Reich had won the war, if Hitler had won the war, this would be every Friday night in America.
Right. Right.
He penetrates the American surfaces with true historical wit, but also justice. He detects something fascist about Las Vegas. Something Weimar or pre-fascist even. And he smuggles this rather serious portrayal of the United States in the early 70s inside this absolutely antic, delightful, suspenseful story of one fucking bad accident after another. I mean,
yeah, it's like The Lost Weekend, but funny, right? I mean, maybe that's not right, but it's a physically excessive challenge. It's like they're trying to climb the Mount Everest of stupid and wasted in this book by going to Las Vegas, which is of course the worst place in the world to be high on hallucinogens, and right, because everywhere
I can tell you that from experience, man.
I'm sure many people who are listening, if there are people still listening, can attest to that. But yeah, and with they're driving cars high, they're doing all kinds of things that are completely crazy. But Hunter, and I described him once as the most instantly believable narrator in American literature. He's somebody like, on the first page, he grabs you, you're with him, you feel like the whole journey is righteous. The jokes land. He's very accurate in his assessment of his own strengths and weaknesses, and he laughs at himself a lot more than people give him credit for. And even the way he gets to Las Vegas in the beginning of the story, and this is the thing that one of the reasons this book is so famous is because it has such a powerful, action-packed, funny opening. Right, which is they jump in this amazing red convertible and start driving on a highway, from LA to Vegas. If you ever driven that drive, it's a great drive, right? It's like it's a great drive to do with a fast car. Even better if you have like all the drugs in the world. The road's empty almost all the time, and they still
not anymore, Matt. Not anymore.
Yeah, that's right. It was.
Yeah. It's a gridlocked corridor of people trying to get away on a Friday and get back on a Sunday. But it was a wilder, freer, and less densely promoted Las Vegas. Spending part of my year there, I can tell you that the Las Vegas of the early 70s is just absolutely sorrowed after. Everybody there just, if we could just get back to that time, when the mob ran things, when it wasn't all corporate, when you went to a restaurant and they didn't time you for 45 minutes and then rush you along. Hunter Thompson is going to the place that's most like himself.
Right. Yes. He's going to this place it's a mirage in the desert that reflects his chaotic personality, and it's perfect. And they have this amazing high-speed drive where all these things go wrong. They pick up a hitchhiker, which is just the worst possible decision they can make, right? And there's a great scene where Hunter starts thinking, well, gee, was this a good idea to bring the hitchhiker? Because the hitchhiker immediately sits in the back of the convertible and starts, reacting to them as one would with two crazy people in the front, especially with a 300-pound Samoan who is the attorney allegedly is. How long can we maintain? How long before one of us starts raving and jabbering at this boy? What will he think then? This same lonely desert was the last known home of the Manson family. Will he make that grim connection when my attorney starts screaming about bats and huge manta rays coming down on the car? If so, well, we'll just have to cut off his head off and bury him somewhere, because it goes without saying we can't turn him loose. He'll report us at once to some kind of outback Nazi law enforcement agency, and they'll run us down like dogs. Jesus, did I say that or just think it? Was I talking? Did they hear me? I glanced over at my attorney, but he seemed oblivious, watching the road. And this is the kind of narration, if you've done a lot of drugs, those are the kinds of thoughts you do actually have, and it fits perfectly with that scene. And I don't know. It's a great setup for the adventure they're going to have in Las Vegas. And I'm curious how many people in the audience. I'm sure, has everybody read this book? Are there people who have not read Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas among our listeners?
I promise that even for those who have read it and read it more than once, there are things in it that you will discover from our conversation that you maybe didn't notice or didn't consider.
Wow.
For those who haven't read it, it's a book that is it's a book that is misconstrued and misperceived. It's more serious than people think. It's funnier than anything. It has a heart. It in the end is not a book about, look at me, narcissist, showing off, getting wasted, doing whatever the hell I want, wrecking hotel rooms. The paradox of Hunter Thompson is that in some ways he's an upright person. He thinks of himself as an upright person. He thinks of himself as an American with rights, who does a job, has, respectable professional credentials, and he has a right to, behave and live the way he wants, but he is not antisocial. He doesn't want to see everything come down crashing and burning, In real life, Hunter liked hanging out with rich people. He liked doing things like go to the Kentucky Derby. He was a Southerner. he was a gentleman. He was an extremely dissipated gentleman, but still a gentleman. And one of the things I think people don't realize is that it's not just a show-off adolescent spree.
Oh, and that was the big criticism when he died, and it drove me nuts to see it. And there were so many reviews about him that just misunderstood what he was all about, right? Like that he was every dumb college freshman who overwrote. And no, this is very, very subtle, almost impossible to reproduce writing, by the way. Like, if no matter how good your ear is, you can't do this stuff. Like, there's a reason why he has not had successful imitators, including me, right? Like, I'm one of the people who grew up reading this person kind of hoping for the same effect. He has this amazing sort of four-dimensional quality to his prose that you can't put your finger on what it is that makes it work. But part of it is the sincerity and the heartfeltness of his prose. And this journey to Las Vegas, I think for him, this was at the peak of his powers. He didn't have a prime that lasted very long for pretty obvious reasons. He had serious drug and alcohol problems, and but he was asking a very serious question, where do we go from here? The 60s, is that all over? Are all those dreams dead? We had briefly this idea that things were going to be better. Is that gone? And is my time gone? Like, am I a good person or a bad person? Like, how do I end up in the, what's the score for me in the end? He talks about the great scorekeeper in the sky a lot in this book, which tells you that he was worried about what his score was, and so when he's driving to Las Vegas high on everything, you're right. He wants to find something out, but it's not in the manner of a traditional journalist. This is a journey of self-discovery, and a journey of this discovery into what is, as you say, what's America? What the fuck is it? And
and for conservative types to think that Hunter Thompson is just some bat out of hell leftist criminal who I don't particularly want to read about or identify with, you've got it wrong. Hunter Thompson loved America. He
loved guns,
and those are the same thing. Okay, I mean Hunter Thompson was someone who loved America so much that none of the liberties that are available to us here did he spare himself, whether they be guns, drugs, driving, casinos, women of questionable virtue, etc. He was in some ways like Mark Twain, who made him Mark Twain,
who he admired immensely. Yeah.
Yes, and I think he's mostly, if you're going to really put him in a lineage, the grandson of Mark Twain. The guy who went on the riverboat, the guy who went out to the Nevada frontier, the gold mining frontier, who wanted to see human nature as it really was, pointing out hypocrisy and cant and that kind of thing, is done by people who fundamentally love something. Otherwise, what would they care? And Hunter didn't write about the rest of the world much. It was America that he cared about, and its promise and the betrayals of those promises.
It's actually an interesting point. He never wrote about anything.
He wasn't interested.
Vietnam briefly, but that was not a big part of what he did.
And he knew American types. When he gets to the sheriff's convention.
Oh my God! Yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah,
and he starts doing sketches of the law enforcement agents there. He knew every state. He knew every type. He knew every kind of politician. He knew how power works in America. He was an absolutely spot-on sociologist, and his knowledge was rooted in having been everywhere and met everyone. This is the opposite of a book that the AI could ever write.
Okay, so that was going to be my last point. Before, I know we're running over time wise, but to me, the great test of any writer is, did the person invent his or her own language? Hunter Thompson has a style of prose that is timeless. It's completely unique. It's not rooted in slang words from that era. It's just rooted in his unusual use of the English language. If you read, if you care to read, you'll find that his influences include people like Celine and Nelson Algren, but none of those people really show up and Hemingway even, right? And Scott Fitzgerald. But he has a prose style that is uniquely his own. He has a comic timing with his descriptions it's so economical and unusual. I just can't think of another writer who's like him. No. Really.
He loves America. He loves language. In the style of Twain, or in the tradition of Twain, he basically invented an alter ego for himself, just as Sam Clemens and Mark Twain were different. Hunter Thompson and Duke are different. I remember as a kid, after I read Fear and Loathing for the first time, I think I was a high school junior, I was sure that this was a made-up guy. I didn't think he existed. I didn't think it was possible that there really was a living Hunter Thompson. And I thought that for years. He wasn't on TV a lot. Every once in a while, he'd go on a talk show toward the end, but I saw no evidence of him. I moved to Livingston, Montana, and a friend there, Tim Cahill, who was one of the first writers at Rolling Stone when it started in San Francisco. And everybody knew Hunter, and everybody partied with Hunter, and Hunter was real. And Hunter was a lot like the guy you read about. And I was floored. I thought this had to be a literary construct, this exaggeration. No.
If you run into anybody who's ever met the guy, all the stories all ring true.
He was civilized. He used a cigarette holder. Come on. And my last story about him was when I mentioned before that late in George McGovern's life, I had a long dinner with him in which she was able to talk about his entire career. And George McGovern was the sweetest, kindest, most humane, gentle, measured person I've almost ever met. That he could have come within a hair's breadth of the presidency was shocking. That would have been an experiment, a real human being. Anyway, he would talk about, Walter, I loved Hunter. It was so wonderful being able to talk to him on the bus. I feel bad for him because, he had a drug problem. And I think that limited him in some ways, but he was a very nice man and a very good reporter and da-da-da-da. And I was like, you met Hunter Thompson and you surmised that he had a drug problem, which told me that Hunter Thompson, in the company of this most civilized person, was capable of being civilized himself. He wasn't a caveman.
Yeah, and he loved George McGovern, and he had this childlike belief that a great shark was going to come and save us and lead the country out of the shadows and all this stuff. And I'm sure he would be opinionated now in a certain way, but more importantly for me, this book it's just like this bright like explosion of literary beauty, right? And it's so eccentric and bizarre in its subject matter and the plot devices, and As you know, as a fiction writer, it takes a lot of work to come up with these little tricks that make things funny, like the constant references to my attorney as opposed to giving them him a name. Like Hunter really put a lot of work in this thing, but it shot out of him like a cannon. And this is a portrait of a person who's kind of hurting, confused, angry, but also determined, and full of true grit, and is going to give something his best shot. We just don't know what it is exactly at the beginning of the book, but it's an awesome setup. And if you haven't read the book,
it should be the Bible for the libertarian party.
Right. Well, that's for sure. Yes.
It's the best argument for the libertarian point of view I think I've ever seen. Like, as long as you don't hurt anybody or don't hurt them too badly, or as long as the ones you hurt deserve it,
right?
Anything fucking goes.
Right. Exactly. And you know what? It's okay to get a car on a credit card that's not actually valid. Last thing I'll read. You talked about how he loved America. He gave the most heartfelt and beautiful description of what America is. In response, he's having an argument with his attorney about the United States, and he said, "Oh wait, hang on a second. I'm in the wrong place. I'm sorry." He says, "You Samoans are all the same," he said. "You have no faith in the essential decency of the white man's culture. Jesus, just 1 hour ago, we were sitting over there in that stinking baño, stone broke and paralyzed for the weekend, when the call comes through from some total stranger in New York telling me to go to Las Vegas and expenses be damned. And then he sends me over to some office in Beverly Hills where another total stranger gives me $300 cash for no reason at all. I tell you, my man, this is the American dream in action." And it's a beautiful defense of what America in 1971 was, and so you're kind of with him for this whole journey.
For me, it's a book, and one of the reasons to read it now is by contrast with the moment. It is a book about freedom at its limits.
Oh, absolutely. This book couldn't be written now. It would be canceled 50 times over before it even got to a sensitivity read. So if you haven't read the book, if you're maybe a part of a younger generation and this wasn't something that was recommended to you, please do pick it up. You will not regret buying it. Not least for the great illustrations by his friend Ralph Steadman, who is it's rare that a book, we talked about Sherlock Holmes and The Strand. This book's illustrations are also iconic. Yeah. Anyway, grab it. We'll talk more about it later. Walter, thanks for hanging out today. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us rant on for a little bit longer than we usually do. And we will see you later this week.